The White Sox signed a veteran left-handed starting pitcher, and while he won't exactly replace Garrett Crochet, let's discuss what Martin Perez brings to the table next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the Sox keep making moves in January. This time they've signed veteran starter Martin Perez. Let's discuss what the Southpaw brings to the Sox in the first segment. Then he's just the second player this offseason that the White Sox have signed who's going to make more than $2 million. Let's discuss the team's frugalness, possibly actually making some sense this offseason. And then to make room for Perez on the roster, someone has to go. So let's discuss who should be DFA'd off the 40-man roster. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Well, Martin Perez is another prudent free agent signing. You know, the Sox need a veteran starting pitcher in the rotation. Had they not traded Garrett Crochet, I would have advocated, still to roll them with their young guys. But since Garrett Crochet is gone, you do need at least a veteran who knows how to get outs, kind of show the younger guys how you go about your business in the big leagues. Just provide some veteran leadership, even if it's just, hey, this is how I do my things. If it's leadership by example, they need that. And Perez has been around for a while. And yes, I believe it's Martin Perez, not Perez, Martin Perez. I believe I looked up that enunciation guide. What I also like is you're getting a pitcher who's had some crossover with manager Will Venable. Perez was in Boston in 2021 and then in Texas in 2023. So you have some familiarity there. I'd rather tap into, Venable. And I said it on yesterday's episode. I said it a couple times now. Assistant GM Josh Barfield's contacts rather than, get the grinder guys that like Pedro Grifol wanted, because those grinder guys got you the worst season of all time. So at least you're tapping into, the adults in the room that I'd like to say. Now, the one downside is it does look like Perez has already had his career year. When, in 2022, he posted a career best 2.89 ERA, also made the All-Star team. But still, he's a lefty that can go out, eat innings, and he can do it better than, say, Chris Flexen, because that's kind of the role he's filling. He's filling the Chris Flexen role in the rotation, and he's also filling then the left-handed starting pitcher role, vacated by Garrett Crochet. Now, obviously, he's not going to be the ace. His career season seems to be past, although Ivan Nova came from the White Sox during the rebuild and, had another great career year, as everybody remembers, and got traded, so maybe there's still that possibility, but otherwise, really, you're just getting a better innings eater than Chris Flexen. And I would say that's a lot better than having to, when Chris Flexen was out there, you had to be like, he's going to give up base runners every inning. Please, for the love of God, do not get roughed up. And if you got roughed up, there's no chance of winning, that type of stuff. Sorry, I had an itch there for those watching on YouTube. And again, he's not going to throw as hard as Crochet. So the only reason he's technically replacing Crochet is just in the, he's a left-handed pitcher. Otherwise, in terms of velocity, his fastball averages around 94 miles per hour, according to Baseball Savant. His sinker is usually going to hit 90. So obviously, he's not going to be throwing that, 99 mile per hour fastball and then coming back with a 93 mile per hour cutter, obviously, like where Crochet, that made him so effective. But he's going to eat innings as his 13-year. He's a 13-year veteran. He's going to be 34 next season. He's tossed 1,575 and 2/3 innings in his career. It includes 269 starts. So the guy, he's going to take the ball. He's going to give you a professional start. He has a career 4.4 ERA with a career 4.45 FIP. Usually he's going to finish, his ERA is usually going to finish in the 4 range. 2018 was his only, was kind of the really bad season. It was his last go around with the Rangers during his first go around, if that makes sense. That obviously did not go well, as he had a 6.22 ERA in 2018. And in 2019, he goes to Minnesota, did not fare well there either with a 5.12 ERA, but otherwise, usually he's in the solid fours. So again, you're avoiding that Chris Flexen, really, really bad. We've seen, he's had some swings, obviously. 2022, he was amazing. 2018, he was terrible. So you're hoping that you either get amazing or solid. You want to avoid terrible. He does come, obviously, with built-in trade value, which is nice. It's going to be for, a prospect with a reliever profile. So on the flip side, not so great, but he does come in with trade value as he started the 2024 season with the Pirates. Wasn't very good for Pittsburgh with a 5.20 ERA, but he gets traded to San Diego, and he flourished for the Padres. 3.46 ERA in 10 starts there, although did not make a postseason appearance for the Padres. Did make 2 postseason appearances for the 2023 Texas Rangers as he helped them win the World Series. He's a ground ball pitcher, so you got to wonder, how's he actually going to do with the White Sox? Because the Sox defense, at least the infield defense, has a ton of question marks. Chase Meidroth, if he's the starting second baseman, he does have reported limited range. Linian Sosa, we all know, has terrible defensive instincts. Colson Montgomery, if he does win the opening day shortstop job, there's still question marks if he will even be a big league shortstop. So you do at least have Josh Rojas, depending on where you play him. But definitely up the middle, you've got question marks. Brooks Baldwin usually has a reliable glove, at least for his profile, even if he might not be able to hit big league pitching. And yes, I know he raked at the minor leagues for those that are like, oh, Brooks Baldwin, come on. Look, he still has to prove he can hit big league pitching, and he didn't do that, in his brief appearance. He showed that he might be able to drive the ball to right field if he can, pull it, drive it and hit doubles, but didn't really show a lot of power and didn't really show a lot of hard hitting. So I'm just saying that. But Perez has a career 48.7% ground ball percentage. So he's going to get guys to put the ball on the ground. He's going to get medium to weak contact. He's not going to fix, though, the White Sox, lack of strikeouts now on the roster with Garrett Crochet gone, because the White Sox are going to have to replace, a lot of strikeouts there, over 200 strikeouts that they've just lost. His career best is 169 in 2022 when he made the AL All-Star team. But otherwise, before that, it was 135 in 2019. He does have a career 16.2% strikeout percentage, too. So he's not exactly going to blow guys away. He's not exactly going to miss bats. But what he will do is, again, he's going to induce ground ball contact. Steamer projects 24 starts, a 4.65, a 4.64 ERA, and a 4.78 FIP with a 1 F4 in 2025. But again, he usually will induce more weak contact. His career hard hit percentage is 35.6. Medium contact, 53.4%. So, with his stuff, you're definitely going to be getting a guy that should not be getting like a lot of barrels and a lot of loud contact. It's going to be more get that, weak contact, that medium contact, get the guys to put the ball on the ground. The question is can the defense back him up? And considering he's just being asked to be that veteran rotation pitcher that, Chris Flexen was asked to be in 2024, he's obviously a much better option. Flexen had a 4.95 ERA, and you just prayed that he didn't get lit up. He was going to put guys on base. Perez finished with a 4.53 ERA, and again, you're hoping you get somewhere more between of what he produced with the Padres when you had, that ERA under 3 in 10 starts for San Diego, or it would be great if you can get another repeat of his 2020 career season. It'd be great if you could get another Eric Fetty type production. That way you can obviously trade him for more than just the reliever profile prospect. And again, I want him, though, to be traded before the trade deadline, because I would love to see Kai Busch and Mason Adams and even Hagen Smith get some innings in the second half. But also I'm much more comfortable with him now in the rotation than say, hey, Bryce Wilson would be your veteran starter, because Bryce Wilson's numbers do not support him being a very good starter. And also he's right-handed. So at least you get a left-handed starting pitcher. You allow Kai Busch to have a little bit more time in the minors, and obviously allow Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith more development time. You're just buying yourself some time here, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with buying yourself time for your 3 talented left-handed pitchers that profile to be way, way better than Perez, or Perez for those that think I might mispronounce names, but it's Perez. That's what I heard on Foul Territory. Okay. Also, with Bryce Wilson, I mean, you could still have him try to, make the rotation. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, even though I feel more comfortable with him coming out of the bullpen. I've seen him with my own two eyes, live and in person, be more productive out of the bullpen. But I do think he should still be given a shot to win a job, because you just don't want to hand Sean Burke, for example, the starting job. Yes, he was amazing in those 4 starts, but you still, those 3 starts and 1 relief appearance, but it's still just 4 big league games. You still want him to earn it. And I know they're very high on Shane Smith. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken him in the first round of the Rule 5 draft. But you still want to create competition. You still want to make these guys go in knowing that nothing has been handed to them. The only 2 pitchers that really should be penciled in, I would say 3, is Davis Martin, Jonathan Cannon, and Drew Thorpe, and now Martin Perez. Otherwise, create some competition. In terms of cost, it's a 1-year deal for $3.5 million with a mutual option for 2026, and he would get a $1.5 million buyout. That's going to probably be paid, because if for some reason he stays with the team the entire year, which I hope does not happen, he's going to elect free agency. I mean, especially if he puts together another solid season, he's going to probably get more than $5 million. I'm surprised they got him for basically $5 million, because that's what it is. It's basically a 1-year, $5 million guaranteed deal. He was projected to, I believe, make $7 million. So at least they got him at a good price. Although it's the largest free agent contract the White Sox have given out so far this offseason. So speaking of that, the Sox obviously have not spent much at all this offseason. And I've seen some folks get a little upset that they're not spending what they, they're just not really spending at all. And they said they weren't going to spend. I do agree, though, that you probably should have expected a tick more. So let's discuss that after the break on Locked On White Sox. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? I'm sure I've got some subscriptions that I'm still paying for, so I really do need to check out Rocket Money. I keep saying that, and I keep forgetting to do it, and I really, really need to do it, because it also sounds like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. And I know my wife, she's stressing out about the budget. The bills from Christmas, they're coming due soon. So I really should check out Rocket Money and see how they can help me save some cash. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't get the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So I talked about on yesterday's show that one of the offseason trends has been the Sox signing players to 1-year deals making less than $2 million. Well, can't really say that anymore, because the Sox did officially announce Josh Rojas has signed with the team. He signed a $3.5 million deal, so that at least bucked the $2 million trend. And then John Heyman is reporting, again, it's a 1-year, $3.5 million deal for Martin Perez, plus a $1.5 million buyout. Mark Feinsand, yeah, I believe it's Feinsand, from MLB.com. He said it's just a 1-year $5 million deal. Either way, the Sox have now signed 2 players for over $2 million. And although the team is still not officially announced Perez is signing, but that's just because, like what they did with Rojas, I think they're still determining who do they have to clear off the 40-man roster. And, the Sox seem to like to take their time with that, because the Sox are going to have to make a roster move to fit Perez into the 40-man roster. I'll discuss that in the next segment. But the White Sox total free agent offseason spending for major league deals now is up to, if my math is correct, signing MLB trade rumors as of December 31st, and then doing just the straight math, It's now up to $10.75 million. And if you want to add that $1.5 million buyout that will be owed to Perez, you got $12.25 million. Wow. When they said they weren't going to do heavy lifting in free agency, I didn't think they would be using basically the figurative 3-pound weights. Although technically that number could go up if Bobby Dolbeck makes the big league roster. I believe he would get like $1 million. And if the other non-roster invite guys make the roster, I think they're going to get the league minimum. So, hey, you may be looking at what, 13, 14 million spent. Great. That's kind of what you want to see for a team that just finished with the worst season of all time. And for example, spending cuts, good Lord. I'm seeing Josh Nelson project the 26-man payroll for just a tick below $65 million. Spot Rack is projecting a $71 million payroll. I mean, that's way, way down from the $132 million player payroll in 2024, which led the AL Central, by the way. So not only did the White Sox lose an historic amount of games, but they did it with the highest payroll in the AL Central. Think about that. They operate in the AL Central, where they technically are a big market team. Chicago is still the third biggest market, even though you have to share it with the Cubs. There's still plenty of potential fans to pull from. You could even technically pull from Indiana. And the White Sox continue to act like the Tigers, like the Guardians, like the Royals, and like the Twins. Not like there's anything wrong with that, because they do build smart rosters and they operate smartly. But what you want to ultimately have the White Sox ever become, if the new owner ever comes in, hopefully it comes in, and they want to stay in Chicago, they operate, their minor league system, the draft and development, they operate like those 4 teams. But then they spend to bury those guys, Cubs should be doing the same thing. Cubs and White Sox fans should commiserate constantly about these teams' lack of not spending enough. But the White Sox at least have in the past under Jerry Reinsdorf. I mean, when you think about it as an owner, you got to give Jerry Reinsdorf some credit when you compare him to Bill Veeck, Beck or Veek, however, announcer, if you love him, certainly the announcer that mispronounced his name, Charles Comiskey, they were notoriously frugal. Although Bill was operating under a shoestring budget just based on his revenues. But Jerry, during the rebuild, during the last, competitive window, even though it was so, short, he did at least spend. It was just not spent wisely. But you can be excused if you are disgusted with the team's frugalness this offseason. You would, I was at least hoping for them to still have like maybe $100 million payroll, not $65 million. I mean, I'm fine with giving, some guys some runway, let's go with the kids can play. I'm fine with that. But at the same time, you think you could get some, maybe a better veteran free agent starter than Perez. I like Perez, but maybe Jose Quintana would have been better. And even though he would have costed maybe $12 million, you would have gotten maybe a better trade value chip. You can also be discussed with the frugalness when the Royals, they lost 100 games in 2023 and then made the playoffs by spending some money in free agency in 2024. And the Sox can no longer point to the cheapness, their cheapness in arms, their buddy in cheapness. The Oakland A's, they've spent $70.95 million as of December 31st. But at the same time, there's context in those two situations. So if you are getting frustrated with the Sox frugalness this offseason, you got to take into account, remember, context matters. Words matter, so does context. And that's why I'm not completely upset with the Sox only spending, $10 million in, free agency right now. Because you want to give a lot of these young players some runway. I want to see what Brian Ramos does. I want to see what Colson Montgomery does. I want to see what Edgar Carroll can do. I want to see what Kyle Teal can do whenever they get called up. But when they get called up, I want runway. I am fine with Perez being the veteran starter, as I explained in the first segment. If he does get a little bit in the runway of, say, a Sean Burke or Kai Busch or Mason Adams in the start of the season, because you kind of do, again, need that veteran guy to show, hey, here's the way, even if it's just, show by example. And I'm fine with some bullpen arms. Getting, Jairo Iriarte if he has to start the season in the minors. I'm fine with that, just as long as they get rid of those guys as soon as possible on the trade market. Also, I'm going to see how things go with the Angels instead. That's who I'm going to compare the White Sox plan to, because for the Royals, remember the context, and everydayers have heard me say this, and I've made this point, but the Royals, you can never use that comparison. Like, I know Steve Stone said that, like, hey, well, the Royals turned around their fortunes by signing some free agent starters, but they also had Bobby Witt Jr., a foundational and generational talent, and the Sox do not have that guy. And it also helps if you have Salvador Perez, okay? They just don't have those players. And the A's are spending to avoid a union grievance. That's all the only reason why they're spending. If they didn't fear that the union would file a grievance against them, they would, I guarantee you, they would have just signed Brent Rooker, because they need a star, from when they eventually moved to Vegas. But I guarantee you they would not be spending this amount of money, especially since they'll be playing in Sacramento. And while they'll draw in Sacramento, they're still playing in a minor league stadium. There's not a whole lot of luxury boxes to draw money from, But the Angels, they lost 99 games, and they lost to the White Sox too. And they've spent $80.25 million to find some upgrades. Pitcher USC Kikuchi. I'm gonna butcher his name. I'm sorry. I tried to look it up, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. But they signed him at 3 years, $63 million. Travis Durand, 2 million, or 2 years at $12 million. Shortstop Kevin Newman, 1 year, 2.75, and Kyle Hendricks, 1 year, $2.5 million. And considering the Sox have just added 2 veteran starting pitchers, a backup catcher via trade, and they could maybe still use a shortstop, it will be interesting to see whose offseason plan works better. Now, it's going to be hard to really compare because the Sox are still going to lose 100 games. And again, if they even improve by 20 wins, they're still going to be 61-101. Where if the Angels even improve by 20 wins, that's still going to put them at 83-79 because they only lost 99 games. So this is my suggestion to compare them is, first, obviously, do the White Sox get to the regular 100 loss mark? Do they avoid the 110 to 120 losses? Then I'm going to see how much the Sox jump in run differential. Again, it was a minus 300. So is it down now to the minus 200 range? And then the Angels too, where did they jump in the run, the run differential? If it's a huge jump, then yeah, maybe the Angels had a better game plan to get the heck out of purgatory or at least get out of, baseball hell and into purgatory, because 83-79 is still not great. I mean, it's a winning season, but it's probably not going to get you into the playoffs unless everybody's mediocre. But that's my suggestion for having here. The Angels at least are trying to temporarily improve their lot, where the Sox are going to lose 100 games probably. However, they're going to be still, if Kikuchi and Durand are bad, you're still stuck with their money and their contracts. So the Sox at least are giving themselves some payroll flexibility during the second go around at a rebuild. So I'm fine with that too. Give yourself some flexibility. Stash away some cash. But just make sure that the veterans that you've signed are off the roster by the trade deadline. I don't want to see Josh Rojas, if for some reason he can't be traded by the deadline, I don't want to see him getting at bats in August and September like we saw with Nicky Lopez. I want Mike Tauchman and Austin Slater off the roster by July 31st. And again, if you cannot deal them, unless they're having career years, that's the only reason why I want to see them on the roster after July 31st is you just, for some reason, didn't get what you liked, even though you should just trade them. They're on one-year deals. But for whatever reason, they're having career years. If they're not having career years and you can't trade them by the deadline, DFA them, because I don't want runways taken away. I'm fine with asset showcasing in the first half. But the moment it's clear that the asset is depreciating, cut bait. That was the problem last season. They stuck with some guys too long, and that took away precious big league developmental innings. That will be my problem with the spending, even just the frugal spending. Don't take away runways. If the asset starts to depreciate, cut bait. But otherwise, I'm fine with the prudent spending. What I want to see is when Jerry authorizes the limited spending again, because it's going to be limited. He's going to put in a self-imposed salary cap. That was the other problem in the contention window, the self-imposed salary cap. Although hopefully, maybe he doesn't. There is a possibility he may not authorize spending because he could use CHSN as an excuse. That's the reason why you want to root for CHSN to get on Comcast. You don't want Jerry to have any excuses. You just want that money to be better spent. That was the problem during the last competitive window. The previous regime spent the limited money foolishly. Too many bullpen arms, too many Dallas Keuchel and Yasmani Grandal signings. That was the problem. That's always been the problem with the White Sox. They just don't spend the limited financial resources wisely. We can argue all day, and I'm with you that it's frustrating that the owner puts these basically a salary cap when he doesn't have to, but he does allow some spending, some. It's just never been spent wisely. That's the other key that you want to also, evaluate Chris Getz on. Can he potentially spend the money wisely? And this will be the first offseason where we could see, has he spent it wisely? Because he has spent it at least prudently. Every move he's made has been pretty solid in terms of signing. I've never looked at it and been like, well, that's a bad signing. I mean, there's logic behind it. And if we disagree, that's fine. Don't be hating trolls. Well, someone has to be kicked off, though, the 40-man roster once the Perez signing is officially announced. So let's discuss who should be DFA'd next on Locked On White Sox. Love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories recently was taking my daughter to the White Sox and Brewers game. She loved eating ice cream, going to the kids area, and she loved watching the baseball. Okay, well, mostly she loved the ice cream in the kids area, but it was fun to spend a day at the ballpark with my little girl. She did love at least the ballpark experience, and that was fun, and I plan on doing it again. And if you love going to live events, I recommend using the Game Time app. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with a new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I'm always checking out the Game Time app for deals to my beloved Marquette hoops. I've seen tickets for as low as $1. That's a top 10 team playing Big East hoops. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today, because what time is it? Game time. Who? I will always be a 1990s Bulls fan. Welcome back to the Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or even your baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. Feel free to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. I believe our Apple rating is at 4.5. You get those haters. Like, I got another guy that was like on my Blue Jays show where I mentioned the Luis Robert Jr. of the Blue Jays. Like, wow, you mispronounced practically every Blue Jays prospect. Okay, I didn't have the pronunciation guide in front of me. I tried to find one. They usually don't have a pronunciation guide for a lot of the guys in the minors. Did my best. That's the stuff that just irks me. When people have to just point out these little things. It's like, dude, you put all this time, you put all this prep in, and then also the guys that feel like they have to leave a negative review because nobody's forcing you to watch this. But those who do, watch and listen, I love you. I appreciate it. Tell everybody else about it, and then leave a review. Let's get that rating up. 4.5. Let's get our subscribers up. I believe we're 20 subscribers away or 25 subscribers away from 2,200. Recommend. I'd appreciate it. Because, hey, I'm here 5 days a week talking White Sox baseball, because a lot of you are still out there. You've either checked out, but you want to check it every now and again, or some of you still have this, love that I still have for the White Sox. That really hardcore emotional attachment that you just can't explain to somebody, no matter how bad they are. Like the man in the park bench with the umbrella saying, I still love you, over the guy, that type of stuff. Well, anyway, Jacob Amaya was the latest 40-man roster subtraction to make room for Josh Rojas on the roster. Not really surprised, considering he was brought in late in the season after bouncing around some organizations. Really would have preferred Ramos to have gotten a call up. I did a show on that when they brought up, when they brought in Amaya, even though Brian was hitting much better in the minors, although eventually they both got, they were both on the big league roster. So, it was a wash. Amaya did display a decent glove. Didn't hit much, though. So not totally worried, that they let him go. Although now they, they're only down to 2 shortstops on their 40-man roster. And you got to wonder, should they maybe bring in a veteran, like a 40-man roster caliber veteran, not a, non-roster invite? Because according to the Fangraphs depth chart projections, you got Brooks Baldwin as your starter. You obviously still have Colson Montgomery that they're hoping to be the opening day starter. And then you got Nick Maton, according to Fangraphs. And he's on a non-roster invite. So couldn't hurt. However, though, someone has to leave the roster to make room for Perez. As of this recording, the White Sox still have not officially announced the Perez signing. So if I publish this, it'll get, I'll publish this episode in about an hour. In the morning, it's around 9 that I'm recording. It'll get published and then they'll announce it, and this will be totally worthless. But anyways, it still has not been announced. So somebody's got to leave the 40-man roster. Might I suggest free Oscar Colas? Free Oscar. Free him. I like Colas, especially after he did everything the organization asked of him. Especially after Pedro Grifol banished him to the minors and buried him. The man still did what was asked of him. And I know his problems in 2023 were a lot on him in terms of just being completely undisciplined at the plate and trying to throw everyone out at home instead of trying to hit the cutoff man. I fully acknowledge that. But guess what? He went to the minors and he worked on that. He worked on getting on base. He worked on hitting the cutoff man. And he got like a 13-day showcase, and then he was never heard from again. And he showed it, and then he was never heard from again, ever. So therefore, what is the point of keeping this guy? Especially since he's 26. It's no longer like he's this young prospect that you could still be like, well, there might be still something there. And it sounds like the advocates for him in the organization, they're gone. And I read Chris Getz did not speak really too highly of him at the winter meeting. So why are you keeping this guy around? DFA him, cut him loose, let him go catch on with somebody else. Let him go to the Miami Marlins. And he just screams Miami Marlins. Like that, I could see him playing for the Miami Marlins. I could see him having a decent career for the Miami Marlins. Or maybe, Tampa, the Rays. Like, just let him go. What's the point? The only other player that I think that would not shock me either, that if they DFA'd off the roster, is Dominic Fletcher. He's not even projected now to make the opening day roster per Fangraphs. Zach DeLoach is. And DeLoach fits better to the get-on-base roster construction that the team is trying to construct. Plus, Fletcher's also 27. Yeah, he's got a great glove. Elite defender, in my opinion. But if he can't hit, well, you got Tauchman, you got Slater, and you got DeLoach. Plus, Corey Julks is back on a minor league deal. They DFA'd him off the roster, and they outrighted him now to, nobody claimed him, and he didn't elect free agency, so he's in Charlotte. So he is technically organizational depth. So you got some coverage there. So to me, it's those two that are the obvious choices. Because pitching-wise, you could rationalize Steven Wilson, given how bad his production was out of the pen and he was injured, but he still has the potential for a bounce-back season. And you could trade him then for an asset. Where Fletcher and Colas, I just don't see any value. So free one of them. Let one of them go, please. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball to keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss some shakeups in the White Sox prospect rankings with Elijah Evans of Just Baseball and Future Sox. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the Sox signing Martin Perez, the lack of spending this offseason not being actually a major issue, and who has to be DFA'd to make room for Perez. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.